a king full of riches and knowledge who had conquered the entire world. This was the current state inside the game of our lonely addicted player. In the last 10 years in a row, he has not lost rank 1 in this game once. However, it came at a high cost. He was so addicted that he died from playing too much. Suddenly, he wakes up startled, looking to one side, then to the other. This was his new body. He had reincarnated as Jared, an ugly, obese man in the very game he was addicted to. Besides his ridiculously ugly appearance, his life expectancy had been reduced by 20 years due to obesity. Even sitting in a reinforced chair, you could see it struggling to hold up this giant whale. From a failed virgin with no girlfriend to a fat, noble who will die early, either from obesity or from a war that will come in 10 years since he reincarnated inside the game. But now he has all the memories of this life and his past one. He even knows the glitches that could give him an advantage in the game. So he starts searching for the treasure his late father left him, and it surely wasn't a pack of cigarettes. But the one who finds it for him is his maid, who has rather generous airbags. It's a necklace that helps increase magical ability growth. But the fat man knows that if he breaks this necklace, he might be able to summon a gigantic demon called Isabella. What our fat guy wants from her are the eyes of the mind. The giant demon just laughs at the boy's audacity. He wants the eyes that can see people's true identities. She says it's fine, but she wants in exchange what's most precious to him. The problem is that when she checks the boy's perverted mind, she realizes that what's most precious to him is his first kiss. Since he had never kissed anyone in his 34 years of life, the demon tries to resist. Even a demon doesn't want to kiss a fat man. Well, hard life. But the contract is already sealed, and there's no turning back. She's going to feel the whale's pressure. Sometime later, he starts studying his territory. His maid with big melons helps him with everything he needs. Suddenly, memories flood his mind of moments when he had massaged her. The fat man stops everything he's doing and walks toward the girl. She's scared, thinking she'll be hit again. But this time, she receives a big hug and an apology. When lunchtime comes, the fat man is devouring everything in sight. But this time, he only eats healthy vegetables, even though they taste terrible. In this world, vegetables not only satisfy hunger well, they also burn calories and grant good attributes. That way, it won't take long for him to lose a few tons. The demon who made the contract with him keeps chasing the boy, saying she'll haunt his life until he returns her eyes or dies. A meeting was held sometime later with the entire high command of the territory. There were whispers that it was not normal for the fat man to call a meeting by himself. He was even reading documents which had never been seen before. One of the men sitting at the table bangs the bottle, asking if it isn't boring to read documents, suggesting that they should have some drinks together. Are you trying to get the Lord up to 20 tons of weight? Suddenly, the whale points, asking how the man dares to enter the meeting drunk. Everyone is surprised. The man makes up excuses, even saying that they had drunk together recently. But Jared simply fires a magic missile, breaking the man's bottle. He becomes furious. In response, Jared only asks if he is happy with the abusive life he led over the population while being the city's guard. The man was about to lose it. Jared already knew everything from illegal fees to even human trafficking. And someone like that could no longer even be in his territory from today on. He should be burned until nothing remained but ashes. The man realizes he is screwed. He tries to run, but it is already too late. The smell of barbecue is already rising throughout the room. Everyone in the room realized that any kind of wrongdoing would no longer be allowed in this territory. Everyone begged for mercy, saying that it would never happen again. And to top it off, Jared names Rikus as his new head of the city guard. This caught him off guard, but he bows to the Lord since his loyalty is unshakable. A month later, he himself was going everywhere, putting an end to the bandits together with Rikis. There were beatings for everyone. Even those who tried to sneak away were caught by magic missiles. Gradually, the city was becoming cleaner and more prosperous. Food was distributed in the name of the Lord. Even the army was improving little by little thanks to the eyes of the mind, since it selected people with better aptitude, and the demon kept asking for the eyes back. Suddenly, a guard entered the room warning that they had found bandits in the coal mines, and worse, they had slaves. Inside the coal mine, a girl was crying. She had already been petted several times, as you can see. She had even found a little friend. Even though things were difficult, 1 month passed quickly with them together. Even in that situation, there was a reason to smile. 1 year later, they were already 15 years old, and the redhead fell ill. The blonde girl asked the guard if she could have a bowl of soup for her friend, and said she would do anything in return. The man did give the bowl of soup, but it was obvious that he expected something different in return. The red-haired girl threw the boiling bowl in the man's face and ran away with her friend, but it was impossible to flee from an adult man, and so she met a tragic end. Crying, The blonde swore she would take revenge, but she could do nothing. Until suddenly, the man heard a noise, and when he went to see, it was already too late. He was engulfed in flames. Our obese fat whale had just arrived and is furious that human trafficking occurs on his lands. In the midst of the snow, Lacey's was telling Jared that he couldn't believe the bandits really used the Alamy underground mine as a hideout and wonder how the Lord knew. The boy said it since Graskus, who took care of him, was gone. The bandits must be trying to convince themselves that the incompetent Lord would let their foolish acts go unpunished, and there was no better place to hide than an underground mine, and Lakins, who was putting on his helmet, said that his Lord had a very good intuition. However, Jared replied that the man overestimated him, and looking back, the Lord told all the soldiers to listen to his command. The boy began a speech stating that they were there to end the infamous bandits who had kidnapped their people to sell them to slaves. And for that reason, they would rescue all the king victims and show the bandits what true justice was, punishing them all without remorse. Looking into the eyes of all the soldiers, he asked them to kill those criminals without being a trace. Thus, the boy wielded his sword, ordering all the soldiers to go into battle for the glory of Kia. And so, the army ran into the place. Inside the coal mine, an attack began against the bandits, which started a panic, calling for everyone to get out of there. One of them said they needed to warn their leader, Shed, immediately, and he was quickly struck by a sword in his back. With a bloodthirsty look, Black Locus said that no bandit would escape from that place because he would defeat all the enemies. Then, with extreme ease and all his skill, a chief of security attacked Reincarnated. A war spread throughout the place, with various warriors and bandits clashing. Deeper into the mine, our protagonists led a troop accompanied by lions, commenting that maybe it was normal for a mine, but there were many bifurcations. Jared said that the ability of an enemy was only that of an armed commoner, and he ordered all these soldiers to spread out and search every tunnel. This was a bit earlier, and now returned to the exact moment when the bandit attacking Lena had been burned by the flames of our furious protagonist. As he walked towards Lena, the boy thought that although he had often seen slave traders in the game, seeing them in person now was repulsive. The Lord knelt beside the small girl and asked if she was all right and what had happened. The girl said she was, but her friend had died while trying to save her, and Lena became even sadder, which further fueled Jared's fury. Looking at Manny's body, he thought it was too late, and even if he used his strongest recovery magic, he couldn't save the girl. The chubby boy hugged Lena, apologizing for riding too late to save both of them. As Jared looked at Lena, he noticed that she had a very thin body and rough hands like tree bark, indicating that she had suffered greatly from hard labor. The bandit chief, Shed, arrived at the scene and demanded to know what the hell was going on, questioning Jared. She had seen the Lord realize he wasn't someone important, just the picky Lord, and showed signs of being extremely drunk. The bandit told his Lord that he should have continued fattening up in his mansion, also questioning what the boy was doing in his workplace. Jared, infuriated, said that it seemed the bandit's wife was a mess because Ched was mocking his Lord and therefore he would kill him personally. Shed got angry, saying he wouldn't die at the hands of a piggy like him, and started to conjure magic to counter his enemies. The two majors then faced off, and a bandit quickly launched his lightning magic out of protagonist. That extraordinary speed, Jared easily dodged it using a magic called acceleration. The drunken bandit panicked, questioned how a mage like him could use that magic so efficiently. But before he could see, our protagonist began running around him, creating a whirlwind of dust that prevented Ched from reading his movements. Chad thought that spell worked by accelerating the body or was easily broken because it was hard to control, making it difficult for Jerry to change direction. In that case, he just needed to destroy everything around at once. So, he began to conjure strong electricity magic in his hands. However, before he realized it, he was struck by a blow to his chin, howled by shovel attacks that made the villain contort like a rag doll. After finishing his spell, Jared complained, stating that using such a powerful spell in a drunken state as the bandit had left him defenseless. Letting the man fall to the ground, he told him he was so weak that his anger had already passed. So he asked the man to just disappear from this world, killing him. After completing a mission, the Lord gained loyalty points, and the golden age of the territory of Caria was approaching. Jared thought that with Ched's death, the mine's problem was resolved. All those involved, such as the kidnappers and murderers, were executed to prevent them from further tainting the land with their dirty hands. The main thing was that the captured slaves were escorted back to their loved ones by a soldier from the Republic's order. Inside a carriage, Vina questioned the Lord if he really wanted her to go to his territory. Jared explained that if the girl returned to Malura, he feared she would be sold again by the orphanage director, so it was the best thing to do. He said he was looking for talented young people to work with him and would be grateful if the girl came to the territory of Caribbean. Jared also guaranteed that the young girl would be trained to become a great swordswoman, and Lena became extremely happy thanking her lord. Raising her hands in excitement, she said she would definitely become a swordswoman who could meet Jared's expectations. And the boy smiled, saying that was good. For some reason, the boy stayed silent for a while thinking about something and affirmed in his mind that he didn't expect to find Lena Jizzle Ellis right there. Lena was supposed to be the vanguard of the Demon King's army in the Great War Stallion. Even when players attacked her, the girl smiled while standing firm, living up to her title as the strongest tank. Lena, the living fortress, led the final defense line in the Demon King's army, and any fortress she protected was impossible to break through regardless of the effort. Healing the girl. He thought that was the best thing to do, as it would prevent Nina from falling into the hands of the Demon King and turning to the dark side. The boy affirmed that he would prepare the young girl for the approaching Great War and make her a rising star in his territory, not the Demon King's. However, the most problematic issue was his neighbor in Malora, because that lord allowed the illegal trade of slaves and other crimes, so his territory could be affected by those actions. Elsewhere in Malurka, someone was asking in a mansion where the hell that idea had spent the money. A bald man, speaking imposingly, said he had been hearing many stories praising lately, and he was getting annoyed by that Mosphere's buzzing. A man was next to him smoking a cigar, and the lord of Malora asked Fua what he thought since he was a friend of Graskus. Smiling, the man with black and white hair, Fua said with full confidence that he would avenge his friend with his own hands and would personally clean up that place. On a starry night, the moonlight illuminated several houses in the territory of Caribbean. The Toritos guards were patrolling the city, unaware that above them, someone was jumping from house to house, seemingly up to something malicious. The footed person stopped in front of a specific house, carrying a sack with something inside. Quickly, in a narrow corridor, he threw the sack with an unknown object and then just watched. The man had light hair and mask covering his mouth as he just observed the sack landing in the desired spot. The next morning, our protagonist was seen extremely sweaty and tired, running for some reason. Next to him, Lena had a determined look, also running with a resolute expression. Their trainer said it was the last laugh. And while Lena was running easily, Jared seemed much more exhausted. Jared, almost fainting, asked if Lena enjoyed running every morning like that, and the girl replied that she did because it was always cold in the mine. The Lord approached her, saying they would continue training their endurance, and he would soon choose a teacher for the girl who thanked him. Back at his mansion, the Lord was eating his herb meal when he suddenly received news that a letter had arrived from Orin and Avia. The one delivering the letter was Hayes, stating it had arrived that morning. Jared, reading and analyzing the information, said that everything seemed to be going well, and Lena hearing this, and she also wanted to know what was written. The boy then explained that in short, it seemed managed to cultivate a plant called Latrila, allowing them to produce some of their own food. Meanwhile, Avila was attracting monster hunters to the territory and had already started selling the mana stones he received from them. Lena said her friend used to say that Cribio was falling into ruin, but now that she was there, she thought the place was amazing. Jared replied that they had just started to improve, and soon the whole continent would know about Cribby. Surprising the boy, Lacey's arrived at his side, calling his attention to something. The chubby boy asked what the problem was, and the soldier informed him that there was an urgent report. The two walked to another location, and Jared asked if it had been found that morning, and Lacus replied, yes, and it had also been found in other places. Jared, irritated, wondered who the hell would throw a monster into his territory, staring at the body of a dead beast. Lacey said he was deeply ashamed because he should have paid more attention to public order and taken care of it. The Lord walked up to the corpse, saying it wasn't the young man's fault because fortunately no citizens died, and since they had no walls, they were vulnerable to invaders. Jared thought that since the level of satisfaction in his citizens was first rate, he was sure the culprit was an intruder, but wondered what the bandit would gain by doing this. Behind them, Alubriel's voice could be heard calling for someone, asking the young man to help her mother, and Lays and Jared turned their attention. The girl said that the person wanted to sell her for money, and that was fine, but she just wanted the young man to save her mother. Said that no matter what the little girl offered, he didn't have the medicine she needed, asking her to stop bothering him. However, the girl did not give up. Jared approached them and asked the girl her name, catching the attention of the merchant as well. In the city center, everyone revered the Lord, and Jared asked the girl if she could tell him what medicinal herb she was looking for. In tears, the girl said her name was Mia and that her mother had Rienella's disease. Hearing this, Jared was extremely shocked, as if he knew something, and the girl explained that to help her mother get better, she needed to find an herb, but the vendor refused to sell it. The vendor then, apologizing and saying he was innocent because Rienella's disease was almost impossible to cure, and he couldn't do anything about it. Jared stated that he knew because this disease could only be cured by a blessing on a pontiff or a very powerful potion from the Empire of Athena. The boy thought that this disease was similar to tuberculosis, and its name came from the place where it originated, the territory of Reinella, where there were many dungeons and monsters. The Lord knelt down to Mia, asking her to please show him where her mother was. Smiling, the boy said with full confidence that he knew how to treat the disease Mia's mother had. Soon after, they could see a dilapidated and already destroyed house with Mia saying that was her residence. As they climbed the stairs, the little girl said her mother was on the second floor. Our protagonist thought that the house was old and wondered if the stairs would hold his weight. After quickly climbing up, Mayor ran to the room where her mother was and called for her incessantly. The girl went to the woman asking if she was okay and saying she brought someone who could help, but the woman wasn't happy because Mia had done this before. The sick and worn-out woman told the doctor that she couldn't pay for the treatment and apologized for what her daughter had done. Looking at the woman, Jared realized she had only 7 months of life left and was truly near in death. It had said that no payment was needed and just asked the woman to trust him. Mia, smiling, said that the man wasn't a doctor of the Lord of the city, and she told her mother that the Lord had come to save her. Mary, for some reason, said that she hadn't seen her Lord in a long time, and Jared asked if the woman knew him. The woman, coughing up blood, said yes because the Lord had invited her to work as the head chef of the mansion 8 years ago. The man covered his face in embarrassment, saying that at that time he was still very immature and apologized if he had caused her any harm back then. Jared approached the woman lying on the bed, and she asked him not to come close because he could also get infected with the disease. Mary then asked Mia to bring a wet towel for her, and the girl promptly left while Jared watched her go. The young man then went to a window, opening it and observing the body of a beast, asking if the woman used to deal with monsters. F.A. replied that he was right because she used to work as a chef at Hierarchy Expedition Team that dealt with the sale of corpses. Jared explained that people who are frequently exposed to monster corpses easily contract the disease, but the symptoms only become visible when the disease worsens. He said that Mary was originally fine, but her condition worsened because of the monster corpse found near her house, and a woman asked who would do that. Then Lena and Hayes arrived, stating that they had brought all the medicinal herbs the boy had requested, and Jared said that he had already told her to just trust him since he wouldn't leave Mary's side until her condition improved. Crying and emotional, the woman said she didn't know how to repay this debt. However, the Lord replied that they would think about it after she was cured, and quickly the process to make the potion began. On the roof of that house, the same man who had previously left the corpse nearby was watching everything, saying that the Lord wouldn't create a tear for that disease. However, behind him, lackeys appeared, drawing his sword and saying that he disagreed because his Lord had never failed before. He also said that just as the Lord had predicted, the culprit had returned to the scene of the crime, and the man looked back. Lou is furious, asked if this was the culprit who had thrown monster corpses all over the territory. However, the bandit, laughing with a murderous look, asked why the young man was curious about it when she already knew the answer. Inside the house, our protagonist was mentioning some flower names while sitting in front of Hayes preparing the potion. Hayes said that those 3 herbs were easy to find and didn't believe they could treat the incurable Romula's disease with just that. Using some scientific equipment, they continued boiling the plants to make a cure for Mia's mother. Jared thought that when he played Paradiso for the first time, he came across a post on the homepage about the composition formula to cure Winella's disease. Thanks to that, he could make the tour that was supposed to be released to people only 10 years later. He would do it now. The sick woman called her Lord's name, and the boy said she could say whatever she wanted. Mary asked why a high-ranking noble like him was working so hard to take care of a commoner. Our protagonist said that someone who has gone through this pain knows well what it feels like to keep their head held high. The woman was incredulous, questioning the boy if he had been infected with Rienella's disease before. But remembering his past life, Jared said no, and that he grew up healthy thanks to the love his family gave him. The boy took Mary's hand and then said that his mother didn't just give love. And unfortunately, something happened. It was all true. His family was poor. His mother couldn't go to the hospital for a detailed examination. When they finally got to the hospital, his mother had already lost the use of her hands and was in the final stage of cancer. He felt more anger than sadness because he didn't have the power to fix the situation before it was too late. Even though all of this happened 15 years ago, Jared said he could still blame himself, remembering his mother hospitalized on a stretcher in his past life. The Lord began shaking the vial with a potion and said he was there because he understood how Mia felt. He also said he didn't want the girl to feel the pain he went through and wouldn't let her lose her own mother. Up on the rooftops, Lacey's was chasing a bandit aiming to capture him. The soldier quickly tried to strike the unknown man, who easily defended himself with his sword. The man then used his small dagger to deflect the soldier's sword and quickly try to cut his neck. However, as a servant of his lord, Lacey's easily dodged the attack from his opponent. Surviving the assault with his own sword, he began pushing a bandit back, trying to corner him. The unknown man realized that the soldier was trying to restrain him with brute force. It came at his weak point, managing to dodge an attack from Lise that almost split him in half. The he-thief then said he would finish it now, rushing at Lahis and quickly H him with a kick. Surprisingly, with the impact of the blow, Lacey's only stepped to the side, still standing. After the kick, the bandit realized that his strike hadn't even scratched the man. He didn't even need to dodge. Lacus then questioned if that was all the bandit had. The soldier quick and made a downward strike with his sword, questioning how the bandit dared to go against Kriya with such lamentable lack of skill. Havana barely managed to defend himself with his small dagger, but was thrown at Bara afterward. In the air, he looked at the soldier, stating that he was stronger than he thought, and that the people who hired him hadn't informed him that the chief of the guard was so powerful. Looking at his opponent, who was on the roof, the unknown man questioned how that soldier had suddenly become so strong. It was explained that the reason Wackies was so good in individual battle was because he could control the killing power thanks to his special inclination, morality, and justice. Lakers could surpass his limits and enhance his physical abilities whenever he fought against bad people. The band had then landed, and it was concluded that a person identified as a villain would never be able to win against Blackies. The soldier stepped forward telling unknown man to surrender quietly because he would never be able to win this fight. After hearing that, the unknown man said it was a surprise because he had planned to kill the chief of the guard if discovered, but he had given up on that. He didn't say he would leave for now, but the soldier got angry, asking if the thief thought he would just escape like that. However, the bandit, laughing with a murderous look, asked Lacey's not to be so impatient as they would meet again soon, and he started to lower his mask. He concluded by saying they could fight to the fullest and of the time, and a strange mist being eony from his mouth. The chief of security got irritated, questioning where the mist came from and trying to defend himself with his arms. But as he looked around, he realized that the bandit had disappeared without him even noticing. 2 days later, Mia was seen kneeling and observing something, and Jared asked her to look. Arper Titanus began to explain that what she was seeing was done by gathering mana associatively, which was a simpler method as various small energy spheres began to unite. Wick's other hand, he performed another spell explaining that this was done by forcibly gathering mana using the force condensation method. Mia, curious, asked if both could be used for magic, then wouldn't it be better to practice just one method? Jared, dressed in strange clothing, affirmed that everyone thought that way. Dressed as a wizard. He said that however, evil magicians often corrupt the surrounding mana, and if that happens, a magician who uses the associative method won't be able to use their magic. Neil was alarmed, saying that a magician not being able to use their magic was indeed extremely terrible and concerning. Jared concluded his explanation, saying that therefore, even though it was more difficult, everyone also needed to train the force condensation method. The girl say she understood, but questioned why her lord was dressed in strange clothes and had a funny mustache. Taking off a costume, the boy said he was trying to look like a magic trainer using it. Behind a door, Mary's voice could be heard apologizing and saying that it was breakfast time. So Mia ran off. The woman asked if she was bothering her lord, and he replied that she wasn't because he was also curious to see the dish she had cooked. Calling her Chef Mary, the woman, now toured of the disease and dressed in a cook's outfit, said she hoped the lord would like her dish. The man asked if she was already well enough to work, and the woman replied that thanks to him, she was better. However, for some reason, Isabel was still observing our protagonist with a mischievous look, saying that as expected he was different. Barry is made of particles formed in the air. Our protagonist, who was sitting meditating with a slim body, thought that people always search for shortcuts. Expelling all the particles, he added that everyone looked for a training method to increase their mana by 2 or 3 points, but all of them were inferior. Looking at the system screen and receiving the notification that he had created a new training method, asking him to enter the name. What separated the shortcut from those few was the ability to turn a shortcut into their own real path, and his training method was superior. While thinking about what name to give this method, the boy said that this would be the first of his marks in this world. So, it would be nice to proper name. Bud Player, the one who loves all the shortcuts used to facilitate their journey. Lying in the air, Isabella, with her tongue out, began to last, saying she had been spying on the secret training methods of many magicians. But the boy's method showed an interesting difference. Our protagonist asked the beam if she could see the flaw in Miss' method, and the woman said yes, although normal people couldn't see it. She said she could also affirm that the boy was cheating because he was artificially good at attracting pure mana to his body. Coming up behind the boy and placing her hand on him, Isabella stated that he wasn't a person from this land. Jared got extremely worried hearing that, questioning what the woman was talking about, and Isabella began to laugh. The demon commented that she was just asking if the boy came from another continent, because there were rumors that people from the eastern continent were good at mana manipulation. Relieved, the boy lied, saying that now that she had mentioned it, you remember a story from his ancestors that in the time, there was a myth saying something about that. The boy thought that the eastern continent was a major expansion for Paradiso that had been ambitiously worked on for 5 years, but he died before its release. Isabella took advantage of this, questioning what the boy was thinking at that exact moment. The woman said that many interesting things had happened to her when she was with the boy, so she was extremely curious about him. The demon suggested they take it slow and talk with each other a bit, since he was the only one who could see her. She touched Jared's eye, looking at the ability she had granted him, but the Lord quickly responded that the mind's eye belonged to him. Blushing, Isabella said he could forget about it and keep the ability, considering it a wedding gift for her future husband. Isabella explained that at first she really didn't let the boy's fat body, but now that he had lost weight, he seemed acceptable. Astonished and shocked, Jared couldn't believe what he was hearing and asked if that was why she had been watching him sleep so much. Hoving him, Isabella said he was a great man, and since she had died without experiencing carnal acts, she would accept Gunn as her partner. She also mentioned that he had given her his first kiss, which made the boy really uncomfortable. Jared, in a panic, said he had to go to the territory of Vanilla, but the woman asked him to wait, calling him my love. After some time, Hayes was seen reading a letter from Lacus to the Lord. In the letter, Lacus wrote that Lena was extremely talented. He was impressed by this. Our protagonist said that the final date for Lena to be the strongest person Creo would be by the end of the month, and she must be especially talented, which confused Hayes. The Lord asked Hayes to please tell Lacey's that he would soon find a teacher for Lena, and the girl readily agreed. Jared thought he remembered some candidates for the position just in time, since he was looking for someone to make the girl extremely strong. Suddenly surprising everyone, Arrow was shot, breaking the glass of a carriage and nearly hitting Hayes, who was protected by a magical shield. The Lord, who barely managed to save his subordinate, was extremely scared by all this, wondering what was happening. All the other guards started shouting that it was an ambush and that they should protect the Lord while Hayes tried to make sense of everything occurring in front of her. Elena of Ilos began to come towards the carriage, and Jared quickly conjured the magic shield, protecting himself and his subordinate. Hayes, in a panic, called out her lord's name and tried to throw herself in front of the arrows to protect him. However, the boy got irritated and said it was dangerous, questioning what the girl would do if she died from an arrow hit. Hayes, saying her lord affirmed it was her duty to protect him, but Jared told her not to express her devotion by acting recklessly. The Hoy gave her a gentle tap on the head, asking her to stop fighting and stay there, as if she tried to leave the carriage who would defeat her himself. Because of that humming, and amidst the soldiers try and protect their lord, Jared emerged questioning who the insects daring to shoot at them were. Despite his subordinates saying it was dangerous, Jerry continued walking forward, and Isabella asked if he needed help, but the Lord replied no, conjuring his shield in front of him. All the arrows were deflected and immediately broken by the mana barrier he had invoked. Cratons was in shield. He could see the army of bandits trying to attack him. Most of them were hooded with something covering their mouths, and one of them told their leader that there was a mage with them. Their leader, Todd the assassin, and Mage Hunter replied that it was expected for a mage to be with them. With his enormous axe in hand, Todd said that's why that masked brat had requested his services. Hearing this, Jerry connected the doth, thinking the masked person must be the same one Lack as mentioned before and the one who hired Todd to kill him. The man quickly advanced towards the ward with an axe in one hand and a tool with the other, saying that all mages were useless. Irritated and with black eyes of fury, Todd said he would set an example for this Navvice while charging to attack our protagonist. Throwing his axe with his right hand, Todd aimed at Jared, who barely managed to dodge an acceleration and prepared to use the magic missile in his hand. A hunt before a protagonist could use the spell. Todd used his other tool to hit his hand and prevent the attack, saying it was useless to do such a cheap trick. Immediately taking advantage of Jared being caught off guard, a man struck the back of a lord's neck, making him feel the blow. But it was revealed that Jared hadn't been hit as he managed to use a shield to protect himself, then remarked that the bandit's title wasn't just for Shell. Vanit about his ability and quickly tried to strike up protagonist several times. Todd thought the boy was very quick at casting spells and must be a 4th category mage or higher, but he continued delivering blows. The man thought that Jared would counterattack if he stopped, so he wouldn't let the Lord attack or defend, continuing his barrage of strikes against the shield. The guards were by the fight, and the bandits convinced themselves that their master was winning. So Todd began to mock our protagonist. However, when Todd was about to land a hit, Jared quickly grabbed the man's staff, stopping him immediately. The Lord realized it was a magical artifact, and the bandit wondered how that mage had stopped his attack. Our protagonist said it was just in time since he felt bad about not having any magical artifacts, declaring that he would take that one. The bandit panicked, seeing the boy use the magic of physical strength enhancement and questioning how that mage had such a constitution. Jared said he had filled Togg's entire body with magic, and before he realized it, the man was already full of green veins being dominated. The Lord said that although he wanted to know about the masked man, Todd probably wouldn't tell him, yet the bandit in despair said he would reveal everything. Our protagonist had already taken the bandit's 2 weapons, saying he would love to hear it. However, he wouldn't trust a single word from a criminal, and with Tom's own axe delivered a strike on the bandit. A little before that situation, you can see a boy imprisoned in a small cage. The boy is blaming himself and murmuring about being captured by the bandits. He realizes that the criminals who capture him were talking to someone about assassinating a merchant. Aki sees that Tog was being hired to kill a medicine merchant. Tog goes to his contractor and asks for at least half the money out front, and the masked man agrees. The masked man thinks that all the residents of Cubia's territory were cure medicine. This meant it was easy to find the materials for the potion, so it was certain that our protagonist would go to Rainella to try to gain favors. After a walk, Todd reaches the top of the mountain and wonders if this is where the merchant would appear, and the other man confirms it. He's seen the situation comments that those assassins had already killed 11 people that week, so someone needed to stop them. We return to the moment when Jared was delivering a blow to the bandit while saying he didn't believe his word. Aki, seeing that scene, hits excited since the leader of the bandits have Phoenix. The Lord doesn't stop and begins to cast spells advancing against the remaining bandits. The boy who was in prison becomes really excited to see that, thinking that Jared was the handsome warrior who would save him. After all that situation, Aki can be seen hugging Jared, thanking the young man for saving him. Jerry's happy about Vappa asks if the boy could at least give him some space. The boy moves away from Jared and apologizes, saying he did that unconsciously because he was happy. During their journey to Rainella, the two talk, and Aki tells how he was captured by the bandits after trying to negotiate magical stones. Hearing that, the noble apologizes to the boy as all that happened because there weren't enough people traveling those roads to protect them. Affects the boy, saying he thought he would die soon, but his savior appeared to rescue him. Looking at Aku, our protagonist thinks that he is one of the main investors on the eastern continent who bought a kingdom using his astronomical prosperity. With great talent for analyzing and predicting market trends, he always managed to be a pioneer of new trends and dominated markets surrounding new fashion items. The boy also thinks it doesn't make sense for that great future merchant to be in Kirby's territory. Jared says he understands that Aki is having difficulties because he lost all his wealth, and thus he wants to make him an offer. He states that he will give the boy 15% of the profit if Aki sells a certain product in Renella's territory. In his mind, Jury comments that Aki was an exceptionally well-known figure, so it was better to keep him as an ally. However, surprising our protagonist, Aki accepts the offer, but instead of the profit, he wanted the noble to grant him 2 wishes. Aki also asks for Jared's trust, as he is sure he will do a good job and make a good sale. Jared agrees, but informs that depending on the wishes, they might be denied, and hearing that the young merchant agrees. Shyly, he says that his first wish is for Jared to call him Aki. The blonde agrees. However, upon hearing that, Isabella becomes furious with jealousy. At that moment, Aki also says that he will reveal his next wish at another time. Already in Rienella's territory, Hayes comments that he thought the territory would be boring, but it turned out to be amazing. Heiki replies that there are many people who think that way, but humans cannot resist the great wealth that the dungeons offer. Jared mentions that once the problem of Riella's disease is resolved, the territory will have great development potential. After settling a place, Jared thanks Aki for managing to start the business in a provocation, and the boy says he was just returning a favor in front of a large barrel. Aki asks the blonde if that was the medicine the man was selling to cure Rienella's disease, and the Lord replies that it wasn't yet. After filling a container with a liquid from the barrel, it evolves, and the system informs that Jared has reached the daily limit of proficiency increase. Looking at that, the young man confirms this theory and comments that in the game, it took a few months to increase proficiency, what he knew of a bug. The Lord then gives the item to a cell and explains how the sales will work. After that, the young merchant can be seen selling that potion to an adventurer for just 1 gold coin. The boy comments that he would sell the potion at that price only because it was for Tool. Even so, The adventurer is a bit hesitant asking if it was a scam. He cannot resist Aki's charisma. He states that it didn't matter to spend one more gold coin before dying from the disease, and he promptly pays. Aki thanks for the purchase and finally asks the man to leave his signature on a contract made by Jared. Reading the paper, the adventurer is a bit hesitant, but he knows that this is his only chance. Then he signs the paper and immediately drinks the potion. Jared says it will take 30 minutes for Tolan to feel the effects of the medicine, so the adventurer could rest a bit. The man says he bought it because he trusted Aki, but if it's a fraud, he would take revenge on our protagonist. But before he could say what he would do, Jared states that if it's a scam, he would give the man 1,000 gold coins as compensation. Tolan, convinced, leaves, and Jared simply watches the man walk away. Aki informs Hayes and Jared that he will spread some bait before officially starting to sell. Jared takes the opportunity to start making the medicine again, and upon seeing the equipment's information, he realizes that the production skill blood was working. He explains that in the game Paradise, proficiency in medicine production is based on the quantity produced. Some powerful medicines like the cure for Riella's disease may suffer a 24-hour penalty that prevents gaining more experience. But if the product's ownership changes to someone else except for the XP, all other data about the medicine will be transferred to its new owner. In other words, the 24-hour penalty will apply to the buyer. 2 hours later, as they finish the preparations, Hayes comments that Aki was late. Jared, confident, responds that the young man will be there soon. Suddenly, a huge rumble shakes the entire place. Looking into the distance, Hayes asks his lord to see something, and looking in that direction, the lord sees several people running towards where the two were. Hayes panics, not understanding why those people were running in their direction, and everyone realizes that Aki was accompanied by the first customer and several other adventurers. The whole crowd rushes to buy the medicine sold by Jared. A commotion over who would be first in line ensues, and Hayes starts trembling. Hearing some good comments about Kibbe, young Jared feels somewhat happy, but shortly after hearing some criticisms about his country, the boy becomes irritated. Aki tells the entire crowd that he will start selling the medicine only that day and warns that anyone who wants to buy the potion on other days will have to go to. The boy also warns that since the Nightmare Forest has few hunters, adventurers who go to can have fun in the forest and acquire the potion at a lower price. Jared and Hayes begin frantically serving all the customers while Aki continues his advertisement. Without hesitation, seeing the young man's charisma, all the adventurers buy the potions. After a long day of work, it was already night and it was snowing. Inside a residence where they were staying, Jared thinks that the profit from medicine sales was 12,200 in gold. If he converted that to Brazilian reais, it would be approximately 53 million Rus, proving that monster hunters were indeed wealthy. Someone suddenly surprises the Lord and asks if he was satisfied with today's profits. Jared asks this person why they were wandering around instead of sleeping, and Aki replies that he just came to ask for his other wish. The blonde remembers that the young merchant had only asked for one wish, and that there was still one more. So he asks what it would be. Heike bows and states that he wishes to be Jared's vassal and manage a trading company under the Lord's supervision. The young man affirms that he is still an inexperienced merchant, but if Jared gave him a chance, he would build the best trading company in the north. Hearing this, the Lord mentions that the boy had a lot of courage for someone who had been kidnapped by bandits. Smiling, the boy says he was already thinking of having Aki as an employee, but being an official of trade, someone of Pacento of Caribia was not an easy position to obtain. Aki says he knew that. So the Lord responded that he will give him the position because he promised to grant the boy's wish. He added that the boy's vision of seeing the potential for Caribia's development and his ambition to reach such a high position were admirable qualities. The boy thanks him extremely proud, and Jared tells him to go to sleep because they would return to Caribia's territory the next day. Going to the balcony, the blonde thinks he was happy to feel the warm spring wind. As in his territory, the wind is always cold. Back in the territory, a few days pass, and Jared informs that thanks to the bug, his skills in mixing medicines and creating potions have risen to level 35. Using the automatic production they bought, 24 bottles of medicine can be produced in a single day, and each bottle is sold for 39 gold, meaning they earn 900 gold per day. Since it is sold only in Kibbe, the hunters who want to take the medicine also stayed to hunt in the Nightmare Forest, and thus the number of mana stones increased. Thanks to the rumors that spread, merchants from the region also went to visit Kibbe to profit from the changes in the territory. The territory of Kibbe had become more prosperous than even Jared had planned as it gradually became famous for its achievements in medicine. The mysterious place of horrors could be seen at high speed. Isabella questions where Jared was going as the boy was heading in an extremely isolated direction. The girl thinks that for some reason the young man wanted to take his own life and becomes desperate. The blonde retorts that the girl was wrong and explains that he was going to defeat Lich Delic. Isabella becomes even more furious, stating that this was much worse than suicide. She explains that Lich is a powerful and cursed dark mage, and if the young man is caught, his soul will be stolen and he will become undead. The boy comments that the girl didn't need to worry because he knew how to attack and defend himself against Lich. He explains that Delic is a Lich who was sealed in the Silver Mountain, a fortress that the creature itself created. In the Great Moral Paradise, he was chosen by the Demon King. So, his seal is broken and Delch was granted eternal life. The boy thinks that when the dark mage becomes stronger, it will be impossible to defeat him using a sword or magic, although he can still be killed with holy magic. Breaking his concentration, Isabella says that the boy was strange because he knew too much, and she asks if Jared could be a disguised god or someone from another world. As the journey ends, our protagonist arrives at the Silver Fortress, which belongs to Lich. Entering the place, the young man begins to search for something in the middle of the vast castle. He comments that what he was looking for was a very small gat and difficult to find. Seeing the boy crawling, Isabella comments that he looked like a puppy searching for a bone. Isabella doesn't understand why Jared isn't doing anything to find Lich. And the boy informs her that normally to reach the boss, you need to get to the highest part of the mountain. However, there are many tracks there, and even he would find it difficult to get through them all. Isabella just needed to look around and see the frozen corpses at the entrance caught by the traps. After so much searching, Jared finally finds what he wanted and begins to pass through the wall. The boy explains that they are hidden was a secret passage. More than ever, the boy was happy to be able to use that shortcut bugs since he was the one who discovered that error in the game. The boy thinks that for some reason there was a gaffe in the model of the Silver Mountain, and thanks to that bug, he had a way to defeat Delic. Jared finally arrives in a room filled with treasures, and Isabella is shocked. Harper tied in his comment that this was the reward for the people who managed to defeat Delic, and that's why there was so much treasure and more than 10 artifacts. After searching for what he wanted, the boy found the artifact he was looking for. The lady agreed, melts a gem in the shape of a ring. Placing the gem on his finger, he explains to Isabella that this artifact wasn't an ordinary ring. It was an infinite storage space that when activated begins to suck in all the riches that were in the room. Isabella asked that it was okay to steal from Deluxe, since even she, an evil spirit, wasn't a match for a Lich. The blonde states that they weren't stealing because everything in that place belonged to humans, so they were just doing justice. But seeing Jared adorned with several jewels, the girl comments that he was really enjoying it. Up above in the cave's peak in prison on a throne, his skeletal figure moves. The cursed dark mage comments that thanks to that Dan Saint, he lost his slaves and his trap on his own throne. G stapped that if he could break his seal, he would turn all the humans in that world into undead and make them all suffer for eternity. However, a hand reaches for the creature's head and Jared states that the man should be reflecting on his mistakes and not fantasizing about his revenge. The old man is startled by the presence of that human and asks who he was. Jared doesn't even answer the question, and after touching a mage, he casts a fire spell on him. Immediately afterward, he claims to be a rising hero in that world. The Lich in a fully skeletal form asks how our protagonist managed to get through all the traps and illusions. Seeing that Lich was still fine even after the attack, Jared steps back from the undead. He thinks that Delic is a mage or traded his own humanity for power, earth strength, and eternal life. Since he no longer has a physical body, he was forced to use a magical manifestation remotely controlled through a vessel of energized life force. However, Delic lost his life force vessel to his saint and was forcibly chained to a body, now severely weakened. If he dies, he won't be able to resurrect. Jarek remarks that he has to maintain the correct distance between himself and his target to avoid Lich's dark magic, which absorbs life. After all, he had fought this opponent several times before. Dodging a few strikes, the young man prepares an attack called Lightning Flash and quickly launches at his opponent, defending himself at a red barrier. The undead claims that it is useless. However, he doesn't notice that several attacks strike him from behind. The mage asserts that Jared didn't need to waste so many arrows at once, as he would deplete his mana if he continued like that, which would be better for him. Lich realizes that the flames cast by our protagonist are burning his body or holy power. Upon analyzing, he notices that the boy had stolen the saint's artifact that can grant the holy attribute to attacks and asks how the young man found his treasure. Finally, Della comments that this is strange and therefore it would be better get rid of Jared as soon as possible, and he begins to prepare a spell. Our protagonist remains unfazed and states that he was there to meet his favorite old mage and should be treated a little better. Hidden breaks Lich's barrier and prepares another attack. The young man strikes the skeleton with a fireball and immediately passes by him. Jared thinks that the tactic of attacking Lich before the undead could counterattack is working. Preparing an attack with his staff, the young man also comments that while there may not be a quick way to defeat Deluxe, if he keeps applying the same pressure, he will win. Del thinks that his opponent knew exactly what to do, but still this was his territory and he had the advantage. He then orders his knights to rise and several skeletal creatures begin to emerge. Finally, he commands all those skeletons to punish our protagonist and the monsters obey. Isabella panics and tries to warn her master that the undead were approaching, but he already knew. Jerry realizes that this was not a standard move from Deluxe and supposes that the skeleton acted this way because he had not yet been fully resurrected. Belich thanks Jared for allowing him to feel the rage of his suffering once more, and now that the holy flames are gone, he will show his true strength. While fleeing from the army of skeletal knights, the blonde thinks that he needs to engage Lich in close combat to prevent the mage from using heal spells. Isabella states that she will take care of the undead and then begins to possess a horned skeleton. The giant's companions don't understand why the skeleton is acting that way. Looking closely, they realize that the creature was no longer the same, and now the monster had red eyes. The evil spirit remarks that she wasn't pretty, but certainly that was a powerful body, and she begins to attack her own teammates. Lich becomes irritated when he sees that person interrupting his battle and attacks her. The skeleton uses a spell on the body that Isabel possessed, raking hats with a giant skeleton. Seeing that he has an opportunity, Jared thanks Isabella and then throws a lightning spear at his opponent. Upon being hit, the powerful skeleton writhes in pain. And at that moment, our protagonist states that more lightning attacks are on the way and launches them at his enemy. The dark mage counts that he wouldn't fall for that trick again and raises a bone to shield himself from the attack. However, for some reason, the lightning strike begins to pierce through the barrier and goes through Lich's chest. The skeleton can't believe what he's seeing and asks if his opponent had cast 2 spells at once. Confident in his victory, the blonde claims that this was his own style of magic and that Dello had underestimated him. Immediately afterward, he uses his staff along with the ring he had taken and begins charging a spell with a holy attribute. After hitting Dilu squarely, the skeleton burns in despair. With the attack, which can be seen unconscious on his throne, Isabella, who was possessing the skeleton's body, still can't believe that the two of them had defeated Delip. Jared, seeing this, walks slowly toward the major's body. Lich, who seemed dead, shows that he was not, and suddenly launches a sneaky attack on Jared. However, already expecting that the boy counters, striking his opponent's skull. Using his mind's eye, the boy states that he knew Lich wouldn't die from just that attack. This time, he uses his healing ability with Hold the Attribute and places his palm over the skeleton's chest. Once again, the creature groans in pain as it refuses to believe it's going to die in such a way. He thinks that the true taste of death after becoming a Lich was strange. And even though his instinct screamed for him to flee from that man, the seal prevented him from doing so. But changing his demeanor, Delet declares that fear and death didn't exist for him, and that made him laugh. The demon claims he is a Lich, the bearer of plague, and the one who rules over death. And charging all this purple energy, the skeleton says that he is Lich Delic. After invoking his true power and taking on a new form, the demon comments that he will now play with Jared. With a massive release of purple energy, an explosion occurs, destroying much of the place. Still bound by his chains, the Lich begins to emit a dark aura. And to avoid it, Jerry defends himself with a blue shield. Our protagonist remarks that the mage was just casting spells at him to the point where it could hardly be called magic. After so many spells are cast against his barrier, it shatters and the boy falls into despair. Lich unleashes a wave of aura at the boy and orders him to die immediately. Jerry can only watch as a powerful strike comes toward him, frozen in complete shock. However, Isabella immediately steps in to defend him, preventing the attack from reaching her husband. Seeing his battle interrupted once again, the dark mage grows furious and declares that the demon would no longer interfere. Della pierces the chest of the skeleton, commanding the creature to vanish, destroying it completely. Isabel leaves the skeleton's body and tells Jerry that this is as far as she can go, asking if the boy is sure he can win. The boy states that Delop won't be able to move a finger against him while in that state, so everything will be fine. Shin says that he was confused by Lich's appearance and powers at first, but he still hadn't changed his patterns. Just like any other monster in paradise, Tapong knew everything about Delok. Whether it was the way he attacked or dodged, it didn't matter. He knew it all. So, our protagonist advances toward the creature. Lich calls the young man a little rat and comments that it's time for Jerry to be crushed. As a result, a hand appears above the boy. Jerry adds that he even knew all his enemy's tricks and easily dodges the attack. Surprised that his opponent managed to evade that strike, the dark mage bursts into laughter. The blonde arrogantly states that the one thing he was certain of was that he would defeat that skeleton. But the creature responds that it's unlikely, as the young man was too busy dodging the blows. Suddenly, right in front of Lich, Jared appears and declares that he will definitely defeat the skeleton. Dell realizes that his enemy used a 4th-class spell, and from the beginning, Jared had only been pretending to be weak. Confident, the boy begins to invoke a golden aura, while stating that he was always 100% sure of himself. He uses the spell Magical Fortification. A golden aura begins to cover the chains that imprisoned Lich. Seeing his enemy in agony, a boy says that a scoundrel like him without any merit is easy to strike down. Finally, he comments that Lich should feel the blessing of God flowing through his entire body. The young man thrusts his hand through the skeleton's ribs and uses a divine blessing ability once again. A strong light begins to radiate through the dark mage's entire body and pierce even through his skull. That light expands throughout the area, momentarily blinding everyone present. As the dust settles, Jared observes the skeleton. Then the boy asks Deluxe to give up, as the Demon King won't appear anytime soon. The dark mage replies that he will decide when to give up, as a terrible future awaits Jared. Finally, even with only a portion of the skull remaining, he threatens the boy, stating that he should consider what he will have to face from that day forward. Our protagonist seems unfazed by the demon's words and continues to mock him, treating him like trash. Delic realizes that the young blonde had a deep desire in his soul and questions what the boy wanted. With a serious expression, the Lord of Caribbean declares that he desired the most powerful symbol of the monarchy, which belonged to Delic. The skeleton starts laughing, saying that Jared must be drunk, as he was trying to accomplish something that neither the Lord of the Gods nor the devil himself could achieve. As he was about to leave, Delch remarked that it had been very entertaining and that he would be watching the boy from hell through his priceless eyes. Seeing the scene, Isabella thought that part of Jared was quite frightening. Even though there were many people stronger than the boy, he didn't care, as if he knew that one day he would surpass them all. After Lise disappeared, Jerry collected a bracelet that had been attached to the skeleton's body, and the boy remarked that it was incredible, as growth-tad artifacts were by far the best. Hutting the object, he commented that there was no better artifact than that one, and was very happy to have obtained it. Isabella noticed a strange book on the ground, and quickly informed the Lord. She assumed it must be something Lich left behind. Our protagonist thought that in Medium Paradise, Lich had never dropped a book. On the book's cover, it was written that the artifact contained information about Witch's resurrection spell. After reading the artifact, Isabella Vienna summarized, explaining that whoever is resurrected would have a contract with the master who revived them. Read more details about the contract. Isabella stated that if she accepted it, she would practically become Jared's slave. Then, she became irritated, declaring that this wasn't the type of relationship she was looking for, and asked why the blonde wanted her to be revived. The Lord explained that firstly, he wanted to be pleasantly bound by the girl. Secondly, she would use the curse magic on him, and the young man would defend himself as best he could. As she listened, Isabella misunderstood his intention. Finally, Jared confirmed that thirdly, they would repeat the process, enhancing his resistance and magical tolerance at the same time. Isabella then realized what it was about. She looked at our protagonist with disdain and contempt, which irritated him. The young woman asked if that was all, and Jared requested that she fondly about the other uses that could benefit both of them. Sighing, the demonist agreed, as she was growing tired of her old boring routine and one's return to being human. He quickly began walking, saying that the resurrection changer was nearby, but the young woman hesitated, not feeling ready yet. After some time, for some reason, the Lord of Kriya was extremely out of breath, carrying a beautiful woman on his back. He asked why he had to carry Isabella, and the young woman explained that she wasn't comfortable with that body, and also as to be called Fella from now on. The Lord stated that he thought she had said she lost her memories after becoming human, and wondered how she could remember her own name. The girl simply replied that she didn't know. She also explained that she was in that body because Delac had various fantasies about the human form, but she was irritated that Lich didn't have decent clothing. Our protagonist thought he was glad Bella hadn't changed, but somehow her tendencies were exactly the same, and she even seemed more emotional. Walking back toward the exit of the place, but passed by various bodies, Bella noticed the many corpses around them, and our protagonist commented that the place was full of traps. In a flashback before the resurrection of Evil Spirit, the body Isabella was using was preserved in a capsule, and both she and Jared wondered what had happened to the young woman. The demon has commented that she hoped the girl wouldn't become an evil spirit, as living as an evil spirit was difficult. Even without senses, one felt lonely. Back in the present moment, Isabella thought that perhaps the woman who owned that body would be happier living a fulfilling life through it. That's why from that day on, she planned to eat lots of delicious food while trying out new dresses and makeup. The girl asked if Jared would find that fun, and he agreed. Finally, the young woman nestled against our protagonist's back while he said he was glad to have a trusted companion. Feeling Jared's touch, she fell asleep in that position. Elsewhere, the Lord of Rella was extremely angry as he had received news that more hunters had been lost in his region. His assistant explained that due to the cure for Rienella's disease, which could only be found in Crebia's territory, hunters have been heading there. The noble, upon hearing this, became even more enraged, as that was precisely the reason they had spent a fortune hiring people to seal a cure. Even so, the assistant tried to explain that unfortunately, Kriya had strong controls over the recipe for that potion. Upon hearing this, the chief of the region becomes completely enraged and questions how his soldier could say such a thing as he was hired to acquire the cure. Afterward, a man throws several books at his subordinate, ordering him to leave. Irritated if he thinks that Jared must be feeling like a know-it-all, but he doesn't yet know the true evil of this world. Batman, furious and thinking about what he's going to do, declares that the two can play that game. Sitting on his throne, the Lord of Nurka was planning something. He asked his subordinate how many men they could send against the enemy if he declared war immediately. The pundit assassin explains that currently they have 1,239 qualified men at their lord's disposal. Hearing this, the lord thinks that it is still too few and that they need more men, as Jared is a fourth-class mage. Horos also mentions that he would have sent Gragas to take care of Jared long ago if he had known this would happen, revealing that he had his silence gratis with an assassin. A subordinate informs him that the great guide of Malura has arrived, and the lord is pleased that his favorite mage is finally there. Ephron was a powerful man who wielded a high-quality staff. The mage informs him that he brought the mages Korgos had requested. Horos then approaches the hired mages and asks them a few questions. Afterward, a crew says that if they attack Cribia immediately, the territory would be wiped off the face of the earth. Hearing this, the Lord of Malur that is delighted, declaring that it's perfect. Meanwhile, Jerry was on a mission, heading to the lands of the northernmost end of the region with his subordinates. Along the way, Avila comments to her lord that she didn't even know that was a territory, as it was right between Malorda and Tanella. Jared then mentioned that they were not there on official business, but to make a deal with the tribe living there. The lord on his course finally comments that everyone will soon discover which tribe resided in that region. At the top of the mountains, some creatures observe the arrival of the visitors. Our protagonist's assistant, upon looking up, notices something and sees that a tribe of red goblins is about to attack the carriages. Orin comments that he thought they were the only ones in that land, but now they were completely surrounded and the tribe of goblins could be seen encircling all of Jared's soldiers. The general of the soldiers declares that they should begin the task of protecting the lord, and so they do. However, Lacey's orders all the soldiers to form a defensive perimeter and not attack the monsters, leaving the soldiers confused. Avila doesn't understand why they should create a defensive perimeter against monsters, but she quickly realizes something. Amid the small goblins, a long-limbed creature appears and welcomes the humans. The leader of the red goblins introduces himself as a Vamba. Hearing this, Orin thinks that this was a goblin speaking the Massa dialect, which was impressive. Ja introduces himself to the banana, and the goblin asks why the young man called for that meeting. The Lord of Cribia comments that they wish to establish diplomatic relations for the acquisition of gold. Evaniva asks if Jared had what they needed, and the blonde orders his soldiers to bring it forth. Avila, upon seeing a mountain of precious stones, thinks that it didn't make any sense. It is revealed that they were nightmare stones, and Jared asks if it was enough to satisfy the goblin's needs. Meanwhile, Avila and another subordinate think that those stones are usually found in the Nightmare Forest and are worth absolutely nothing. Lays in his thoughts confirms that nightmare stones are beautiful gems typically captured by monster hunters in the night in their forest. Avid Evil pauses for a moment and analyzes the precious stones. The goblin chief, seemingly irritated, says that no human had ever bothered to talk to the goblins before, but at their first mini Jared had brought this. However, the monster reveals that he was extremely pleased and declares that the Lord of Well. He comments that Jared had traveled for a long time just to deliver those precious stones, and for that he thanks the Lord. After that, the goblin signs a contract and states that with this they become brothers of the North. The Lord comments that he hopes the relationship between him and the goblins will become even stronger, and the Goblin King expresses that he feels the same way. Ebenemo orders his mining to bring iron and gold, and the small goblins promptly obey. The small red goblins bring several sacks, and when they place them on the ground, it is revealed that they are filled with iron and gold. While all the humans are shocked by the sight of those minerals, the only thing the goblins do is admire the nightmare stones. A man working for Jared thought that the goblins had an absurd amount of minerals and that it would be even better to claim their land. The Goblin King warned that they couldn't send their new brothers off without a celebration. So, they were through a feast. For some reason, the monster said there was no longer a need for protection, and the creatures could step out of formation. At the top of the mountains, a group of hidden elves revealed themselves after Epinaba allowed them to step down. The man who had previously plotted against the goblins was shocked when he realized that the elves were allied with the goblins. He thought that his lord must have known about this too, which is why he decided to make an alliance with that tribe. There was also a race that lived even further north in the Red Goblins, and they couldn't be dismissed as forming alliances with more tribes provided various benefits. They had a close relationship with the Dark Elves of Tatar Island, who lived on the adjacent island enough to be part of the treaty. The man commented that Vanable was known to be intelligent and a wise leader with many connections to other tribes. The old man thought that if they blindly attacked the Red Goblins, their bodies would disappear, never to be found again. During a celebration, Sarm races could be seen gathered around a bonfire. The villa approached Jared and commented on how amazing it was that goblins treated Magner stone the way humans treated gold, and she asked how her lord knew about that. At that moment, all the mixed races were drinking and having fun together in peace. The Dark Elves were even arm wrestling with the humans. During a celebration, Jerry called for Lack-Is, and the man approached him. The Lord asked what the current state of the army and blacksmiths was, and Lack-Is explained that due to a lack of materials to forge new weapons, they were focusing on improving the existing ones. Our protagonist stated that now that they had obtained refined iron from the Red Goblins, they should focus on mass-producing weapons. Lacey's acknowledged the order and said he would inform the blacksmiths. The boy also added that they should use part of the gold obtained from the Red Goblins to further invest in the army, and Lays would be in charge of recruitment. Ivaniba, who was listening, asked if the boy was planning to declare war on Malura. The goblin said there was no other reason for such a sudden and large-scale deal except for war. He remarked that Jared was clever, as Malura was a nest full of corrupt and criminal individuals who would soon spread their influence to Kibi. Jared apologized in case Abanable was offended by their reason for the agreement, but the goblin responded it wasn't an issue. The goblin chief commented that in any case, amount of iron and gold was nothing to them, and he also hated Corvos, so he was rooting for Kriya. Ibanema raised a cup and toasted it to his new brother Jared and to the glory of Kibi. All the races joined in the toast, and even Jared, who was a bit embarrassed, raised his glass with the tribe. However, suddenly his expression changed completely and an intense hatred took over the boy's body. On March 14th, 1414, Jared's mansion was in view. Jared explained that it had been 4 weeks since Isabella's resurrection and that to admit her into the house, the Lord had to make up a lie for Hayes. It goes without saying that Isabella quickly adapted to life in the mansion, and she helped Jared increase his magical defense levels with her powers. Thanks to her, our protagonist gained 34 points in magical defense. After their daily trading, Isabella received some chocolates from Jared and questioned what they were. Intrigued, the woman asked if the boy was trying to make her gain weight. Embarrassed, the boy explained that he gave them to her as a gift, as this was the day when a man gives sweets to a woman. Isabel was confused as it wasn't a special day, and the boy explained there was a celebration from the Eastern continent. He informed her that a month ago on February 14th, women give chocolates to men, and the celebration on March 14th is the opposite. The girl asked if he was in love, but the Lord cut her off, stating that he gave sweets to all the women in the mansion. Isabella became irritated, pointed a chocolate in her mouth, and said that Jared used people to promote himself, but still wasn't willing to give his heart to her. The one who tried to kiss our protagonist, saying that their lives were intertwined through the minds, as their contract was eternally bound by a kiss. Immediately after, the boy forced her to swallow the chocolate and asked her to stop playing around. The Lord states that now that they have significantly increased their magical resistance levels, they will focus on doubling the strength of the curse. As a form of revenge, Isabella teases that they will start with a love spell to enchant Jared. The young man tries to resist, but the girl isn't willing to take no for an answer. Then, after being enchanted, Jared manages to meet the minimum requirements to reach the 5th class. The narrator introduces us to the Stimulation Project, which aims to find the brilliant talents of the future and recruit them to Cubia's side. There are several other reasons for Jared's growing investment in this project. Aside from acquiring Tala for training, one of the main reasons is to receive the benefits granted by the priest's disciplinary system, which gives bonus rewards to the teacher-based students. By far the most talented student was Isabella, who always excelled. Lena was another talented individual who accepted the tasks given to her without question. The third and penultimate student was Mia, who viewed any form of training as a game and did it for fun. The tips and tricks that Jared had learned over the years were used to develop his students, offering no problem to his final plan. At least that's what Jared believed. However, he had one student who was the worst, and because of her, he ended up being ambushed. Hayes is seen questioning how a mere servant could call the Lord a teacher. She says she shouldn't treat him so informally, but she will do her best in training to become the greatest healer in the world. Jared thinks that unlike a Claire, a healer is predominantly focused and specialized in healing. Annie is one of the highest classes with only 5 in Nasu. Artist becomes frustrated with Hayes as the girl was basing all her values in life solely on being the servant, and she apologizes for it. In a meeting room, the blonde boy tells someone that he isn't making any progress with Hayes. Sipping tea, the young man states that to awaken as a healer, the girl needs to strengthen her body and mind. Elrin, who is with his lord, says that since birth, Hayes have followed the path of a servant, so training her wouldn't be easy. Jared agrees, acknowledging that something was holding her back internally and unconsciously. The young woman was pessimistic about her situation. Concerned, the boy thinks he needs to guide her down the right path, but doesn't know how. The wise man has an idea and places his teacup on the table. He says that Jared has shown an innovative and versatile mind in the most challenging situations, which is why everyone Cribbit is grateful for what he has done. However, the boy doesn't need to do everything alone, and Hayes had sacrificed everything for him until now. The young woman would evolve on her own, and that's why Jared should trust her. Finally, Oren concludes that Jared is human and needs a bit of rest. However, being stubborn, the blonde boy misunderstands and thinks it's some sort of tactic. He devises an evil plan and immediately opens the door to the room and runs out. Walking through the corridors, the boy declares that he should have thought of this years ago. It just wasn't like the others, and all she needed was a professional approach. While thinking this, the young man doesn't notice the assassin approaching from behind Grade Strike. For some reason, Hayes is completely desperate and worried about something. She sees Jared's body collapse with a massive wound on his chest. Hayes asks how this happened, and a soldier beside Jared says that the Lord was ambushed by an assassin. The man also says they should call a doctor, but it was a dire situation. The girl insists that they should take the Lord to the doctor quickly. However, looking at her Lord's condition, she realizes the doctors wouldn't arrive in time. Hayes declares that she's a healer and must take action with her own hands. The girl kneels and asks for Lord to be patient and hold on a little longer. Crying, she attempts to use her healing power on Jerry to save him. Hayes couldn't take any more and begins to beg for it to work. Memories flit her mind, and she declares that she couldn't let Jared die like this, as she had promised to always be by her Lord's side. Then a strong energy emerges from her hands, and Helula power begins to flow throughout our protagonist's body. 30 minutes later, upon discovering that it was all part of a plan, the girl tells her lord, the soldier, and the assassin that the 3 of them were terrible. Crying, the young woman declares that, it was meant to help her. It was a very cruel plan. The Lord tries to explain, saying it was just a small cut and that they used a bit of animal blood to exaggerate it. He then asks Hayes how she feels now that she has become a healer. Hayes completely loses it, saying that the feeling was terrible. She also scolds the other 2, was just at Jared stating that even though it was a direct order from the Lord, it was a ridiculous plan. Finally, the maid comments that she hated seeing Jared hurt and runs out of the room immediately. Oren remarks that this wasn't what he meant when he told Jared to trust Hayes, and he scolds the lore for his actions. In the territory of Malurka, a man can be seen smoking as he declares them. They declare war on a man of black and white hair, states that in reality, all they need to do is kill Jared to avoid unnecessary blood. As war is expensive, he orders a subordinate to infiltrate the mansion and spy on the Lord of Cubia. But if the opportunity arises, he is to kill him. If Asa manages to infiltrate the mansion, and we see the exact moment he witnesses Jared running after he had come up with his devious plan. However, not knowing it was a setup, the spy is incredulous when he sees a green-haired boy attacking Jared. Outraged, the spy can't believe what he is seeing. He doesn't understand why other groups besides Morta are after Jared and decides to retreat, choosing not to attack Jared that day. On another day, a heavy snowstorm can be seen falling over the night forest near Kibby. Lacey's braves the storm as he ventures into the forest, searching for something. He sees a light, and the person in front of him asks who he is. An old man carrying a lantern recognizes Lacey's and calls him by name. Later in the old man's cabin, the elder serves tea to previous chief of security. He comments that the boy has grown since the last time he saw him and asks him to sit down and drink. As he lights a fire, the elder asks why the boy is there deep in a nightmare forest. Lacey's explains that there had been new developments in Caribbean recently, and he wanted to share them with the old man. He then places a potion on the table and explains that it's the cure for Renella's disease, commenting that the old man might need it out here in the forest. The elder is oppressed, recognizing it as the famous cure everyone has been talking about, but he says nothing more about it. The old man expresses his go, remarking that such a cure was created by a leader, as Kniv explained that Lord Jared has changed and learned from his past. He was the one who allowed the boy to come to the cabin. The elder laughs, saying that the Lord was willing to throw away men just to save a few others. However, knowing that his Lord had truly changed, the chief of security insists that veterans like the old man are needed in times like these. He adds that he guarantees the old man would change his mind if he could see how much Caribbean has evolved. The narrator then tells us that never in the history of the massive continent have there been a war so destructive. Lies were trying to dust, and the heads of countless nobles rolled. Morality and ethics, they become meaningless when one is to be trying to survive in such times. And there was reason to fear. After all, death rode on horseback from one end of the Nasu continent to the other. In a tavern, our protagonist is drinking beer, commenting that the drink is truly refreshing. The young man also eats some seafood, praising it since the place is near the ocean. Isabella, disguised along with her lord, comments that the young man is relying on seafood because the cold makes it impossible to grow anything in Caribbean. Reluctantly, Jared agrees with her, admitting that she was right, as his only hope is that the fertilizers he made will have some effect on the crops this time. Hayes tries to cheer her lord up, saying she's sure the fertilizers will work well since it was Jared who created them. Behind them, a group of adventurers begins talking about how the roads have been clean and safe lately. They start praising the Lord of Kia as everyone sees a wonderful future ahead under his leadership. The man not only has the cure for Reinella, but also many potions, and it even seems like a good idea to buy land in Caribbean. The hunters continue to discuss moving the base of a guild to Caribbean, and upon hearing this, both Isabella and Hayes smiled slightly. The former demon has commented that it was a good idea for them to infiltrate the tavern quietly, but Jared wasn't paying attention. His gaze was fixed on someone else. A rough woman slammed her beer mug on the table, exclaiming how incredible everything was. The red-haired woman called for another round from the bartender. Then she turned to her apprentice and asked if she wanted a drink too. Upon hearing her voice, our protagonist recognized the woman and muttered her name. Ella, the Mad Warrior. He thought to himself that she was a warrior NPC famous for helping players during a first major crisis in Paradise's history. But the only problem was that she'd be willing to join the demon team's army if the pay was right. The young man also felt as though he recognized the woman next to Ella and activated his mind's eye to be sure. He realized that the woman was Chloe, the Queen of Silence, and wondered what she was doing there. Jared explained that 5 years before the Great Stallion War, an NPC Chloe emerged as the Queen of the Great Elves at the age of 38. She had been raised in secret. The boy also thought that Ella shouldn't be in the north, and Chloe should be wandering around freely at her. Finally, he realized that he had just encountered some of the most important figures in Paradise of his history all in one place, and he knew he had to act. With a look of extreme satisfaction, he whispered that he couldn't wait to try to bring them to his side. Jerry approached Ella's table, telling Hayes and Isabella to continue chatting. He excused himself and politely asked to speak with Ella. However, the woman misunderstood and saying she wasn't interested in younger men, so he could leave. Already 25 years old, Jared felt incredibly annoyed by Ella's comment and collapsed to the floor in disbelief. Hayes, irritated, marched over Ella's table and excused herself. She firmly stated that the blonde man was the Lord of Caribbean, but this guy with the continent, and requested that the women show him respect. Everyone around them was shocked to hear that Jared was present. Ellis stood up, remarking that Hayes seemed like a mere servant and should be scared. The Mad Warrior also commented that being of this was no big deal, as there were plenty of nobles in the world. Our protagonist had Hayes to calm her interrupted Ella's rage, asking if he could have a bit of her time, guaranteeing she would be compensated. The one apologized, explaining she had thought Jared was hitting on her. Sting at the bar was already buzzing. Jared suggested they go somewhere quieter to talk. After a brief negotiation, Ella repeated everything Jared had said, questioning if they would really receive 5,000 gold coins a year and a mansion included, all to train a child. Our protagonist agreed, stating that this was just the first payment, and of course, they would need to draft and sign a contract to guarantee everything. Chloe, who had been sitting beside her mentor, commented that she would follow whatever Ella decided, as the human world was all the same to her. Ella asked why Jared trusted her, given that Chloe had only recently become her apprentice, and this was her first time in the North. The Lord admitted that he didn't trust them yet, which is why money was the only way to convince them to stay. Jared thought that the two would help him as long as he incentivized them with money, and therefore there was no chance of them refusing. Additionally, he mentally noted that Ella had never been able to find a place to call home due to her personality. The Mad Knight was overjoyed with the proposal, saying she liked it and promptly accepted. She then loudly asked where the child that needed training was. Later that night, Jared reflected on how he had already resolved the matter of finding a teacher for Lena. He remarked that in the past he would be exhausted by now, but thanks to the Gorza's necklace, he didn't feel tired. As he wrote in his journal, the young man reflected that all his experiences and knowledge from Paradiso were slowly fading with time. Even earlier that day, he had completely forgotten what CLO looked like. Additionally, it would be difficult to write in peace in that journal if the territory continued to grow at this rate. So, the boy definitely wanted to leave a record behind in Korean, a language unknown to this world. Finally, he finishes writing down all the knowledge of the world in that book and closes it. The cover reads Paradiso. The chapter begins by showing the intensity of Lena's training, where she's tasked with carrying heavy wooden towers. Seeing the situation, Jared thinks that the training looks like hell and wonders if the girl will turn into a muscle mount monster. Curious, the young man asks Ella why Chloe is working so hard without Abby breaking a sweat. Ella explains that the world is vast and that Lena isn't the only talented child out there. Ella also adds quite frankly that whoever taught Lena up until now was at best a terrible teacher. She remarks that she could probably kill that person in 5 seconds with one hand. And upon hearing this, the blonde boy feels a bit sorry for lackeys. Ella goes on to say that even without a decent teacher at Lena would still become strong thanks to her magical training equipment. The 4 elemental magics targeted and released by the installed equipment do an excellent job of training her ability to use a shield. Finally, the woman asks how Jared found the perfect training method for Lena, and the boy responds that it's just a common method from the Eastern continent. He explains in his thought that with the system, proficiency decreases over time if the same training methods are used repeatedly. However, with 4 different elements, the system always recognizes it as